He Who Quacks. Oh yeah, you have been editing my stream content, haven't you? I should message you, dude. Can you whisper me your Discord, actually? Let's chat. No guarantees, no guarantees, to be clear. I'm looking around. I'm trying to figure out the landscape in regards to like YouTube editors and stuff. But yeah, please shoot me a whisper, dude. I'd appreciate it. Hello, are you guys gonna do something about Master Yi? Currently there's 0 Challenger Yi players, even Cenarius stopped playing him and now he barely streams because he's not enjoying the game. You're not gonna like this answer. In a game like League of Legends, it is not desirable that all characters are equally viable at all MMRs. It is most important that characters are viable for the players who, the majority of players who want to play them, and it is less important that a character is viable everywhere. An easy example of this is Garen, in that Garen is this very straightforward Demacia man with a sword, and Garen's a very popular champion in League of Legends, and at the end of the day, the majority of people who like playing Garen are, in low MMR, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing, that's not a problem. Now, if a character can be viable everywhere, that's cool. Like, that's not bad if a character is viable everywhere. But if it comes at the cost of making them less viable, where their players want to play them, that is a problem. So, when you're designing a character, you should always ask the question, who is this for? What audience is this for? And how do we make it the best for them? An example of where Riot probably screwed up at this in the past was Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao used to be a noob stomping character. He was this guy who jumped in on you, spammed his Q, knocked you up, killed you, and that's all he really did. And there's a lot of player complaints, like this Master Yi question of like, well, hey, there's nobody in Challenger who plays Xin Zhao because he's a noob cannon, and that's bad. And so eventually we reworked Xin Zhao to make him more high MMR skewed and have more skill and more outputs for the best players in the game. That ended up being, I would argue, a pretty significant mistake in that we succeeded in our goal. He ended up being playable by Challenger players, playable in Pro, all those things. But what we failed at is Xin Zhao's player base disappeared. He went from being like one of the top 10, top 20 champions in League of Legends, insanely popular, very, very, very highly played, to nowadays well below average. He's not giga unpopular, but he's a below average champ. And so that's an example of, in the interest of making a character more skill expressive and playable by everyone, we ended up making him not what the majority of people who wanted to play him wanted. And that was like a pretty bad outcome for Xin Zhao. So Master Yi is in a similar boat, where Master Yi is historically one of the most popular champions in League of Legends. He's very, very popular, specifically with low MMR players. Low MMR players love Master Yi. And so one of the problems is the changes it potentially takes to make Master Yi a very good character for Challenger level players are often changes that would make him either completely overpowered, and in that case he gets banned and has to be nerfed, or changes that make him significantly less playable for the majority of people who his audience are, which is the lower MMR players. And so the answer to you that I would give you is, I understand that it can feel bad if you're a high-ranked Master Yi player and you feel like he's not viable in Challenger, but it is not a design goal, and it would not be good for the game if we tried to make every single champion viable in Challenger, because of how optimized the game is at Challenger levels of play. And so certain characters, especially characters like Master Yi, who tend to be very appealing and very well loved by lower MMR players, it's only worth making them viable at Challenger if it doesn't come at the cost of the majority of their player base. And so that's something you have to think about when it comes to Yi. And one of the things that ended up happening from the last set of like changes we did a number of years ago to Yi, because there was a time where we, adjusted Yi to be more viable in Challenger. We straight up did that. And what we noticed is we got what we wanted at the cost of his play rate. Master Yi, when we did the changes to make him better in Challenger, it worked. He became better in Challenger. He became stronger there. And his play rate went down. Like, he became less popular. And it wasn't as extreme as Xin Zhao. Like, I think, again, there's definitely some degree of high MMR viability we can inject in Yi, and that can be totally fine. But we did end up getting a character who was better for challenger players at the seeming expense of the main people who wanted to play him. And so, yeah, that's the hard part with Master Yi, is characters like Yi, Amumu, Briar, Garen. It's not that they can't be good at challenger level play, but a lot of the people who are most interested in playing them are probably in the lower ranks. And that's important that we don't hurt them for those players. You've told the Xin Zhao story several times, and I've always wondered why Riot didn't just revert him if it was such a big mistake. By the time we realized it wasn't really working out, it was too late, I would say. Another thing you have to consider when you rework a character is at some point the character's audience becomes the new character, whether or not that character is really popular. So basically, when a character gets reworked, oftentimes it can lose its old audience and gain a new audience, right? Not always the case, depends on the character, but that's a real thing. And so by reverting a character, you oftentimes are then losing the new audience to gain the old audience, right? But then another thing you have to consider is, at some point, the old audience moves on. At some point, the old audience is like, okay, well, this character isn't here anymore. It hasn't been here for an ever. And now I'm playing Kayn. Kayn's my guy. He's the guy, right? And so with Xin Zhao, like, he definitely lost a lot, but this was a very, very long time ago that we did this, right? And even though he lost a lot, he definitely did pick up new players. And so we spent a number of times trying to, like, make new Xin Zhao, feel better, right? There's been a lot of work that's gone into making new Xin Zhao feel better, and, so to varying degrees of success. But at the end of the day, he's just not the same character he was, and his audience for the old Xin Zhao probably just isn't there anymore, or has probably moved on to other characters. So reverting a character like that after, so many years probably doesn't make a lot of sense. I think I ran into this, I learned this lesson actually when I was working on JANNA. I did a revert in quotes to JANNA from one of her more current forms, where I made her like more shield focused, because over the years we had reworked her into being more of like a pokey mage in bot lane, like she'd poke you with W, things like that. And I was like, I miss shield JANNA, because that used to be my main. I made shield JANNA for like 4 or 5 seasons. And so at some point, JANNA wasn't doing very well, and she wasn't very popular, and I was like, well, that's because shield JANNA should come back. And so I did like some reverts to her, and like, didn't really work out. Didn't really get any players back. At the end of the day, all the people who had loved shield JANNA had moved on to other characters. They moved on to Lulu, they moved on to Soraka, they moved on to, other characters who could provide that fantasy, whereas the people who liked poke you and roam around the map JANNA then were like very sad, because it's like, oh heck, you took away our character, right? And so Freak eventually reverted JANNA back to poke you JANNA, and she's doing great now. And so that's kind of an example of, well, JANNA at one point was very popular with being a shielder. Like, the time had passed by the time I wanted to rework her. And I probably, my revert of JANNA was probably overall a mistake, versus maybe just doing works to make poke JANNA feel better. So, yeah, that's some thoughts there.